Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on this video. Real quick before we start, if this story keeps you up tonight, smash that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. I always wonder who's brave enough to listen to these at 3 a.m. alone. All right, let's get into it. My name is Earl Combs. I'm 71 years old, and I've kept this story buried for 47 years. But I'm dying. Lung cancer. The doctors give me maybe 6 months, and I'll be damned if I go to my grave without telling someone what really happened in the mountains of West Virginia in October 1977. You've probably heard about what happened in British Columbia. 1978. Delta Force sent to eliminate a Bigfoot family group. 5 operators killed. 3 came back broken. The government classified everything. But here's what nobody knows. That wasn't the first time they sent soldiers after these things. It wasn't even the second. We were the second. And unlike Delta Force, we weren't elite. We weren't special operators with years of training and the best equipment money could buy. We were National Guard, weekend warriors, coal miners and factory workers, and truck drivers who drilled 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in summer. Most of us had served in Vietnam, sure. We'd seen combat. But that was years ago. We'd come home, tried to forget, tried to live normal lives. Then they sent us into the Appalachian Mountains to hunt something that had been killing people since before the first European settlers arrived. And they didn't tell us what we were really facing until it was too late. October 1977. I was 31 years old. Sergeant in the West Virginia Army National Guard, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 201st Infantry Regiment. I'd done 2 tours in Vietnam, seen some of the worst fighting of the war in the Central Highlands. Came home in 71 with a Bronze Star and nightmares that still haven't stopped. I joined the Guard because I missed the brotherhood, the sense of purpose. Civilian life felt empty after what I had experienced. Plus, the extra money helped. I was working at the Consolidation Coal Company in Morgantown. Good job. Dangerous, but good. The Guard gave me something beyond the mines, kept me connected to service without being full-time military. Charlie Company was a good unit, mostly Vietnam vets like me. Hard men who'd seen things and survived. We drilled together, drank together, told stories about the war that only we could understand. There were about 60 of us. Infantry. Nothing fancy. Just riflemen. Our commander was Captain Marcus Webb. West Point grad. Had been a lieutenant in the 101st Airborne. 3 tours in Vietnam. More medals than wall space. He'd taken the Guard posting to stay close to his aging parents in Wheeling. Could have gone career active duty, but chose family instead. Solid officer. The kind you'd follow anywhere. Lieutenant Davis was our executive officer. Young guy. Only 1 tour in Vietnam, but he'd made it count. Had a reputation for keeping his head when everything went sideways. Good man to have in a fight. First Sergeant Patterson ran the NCOs. Oldest guy in the unit at 43. Korean War vet who'd also done Vietnam. 2 wars, 3 decades of service, and still hard as coffin nails. He didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. That was our leadership. And below them, 60 men who thought they were just doing their monthly drill. None of us had any idea what was coming. It started with the hunters. McDowell County, West Virginia, deep in the Appalachian Mountains, coal country, some of the poorest, most isolated communities in America. The mountains there are ancient, some of the oldest on Earth. The hollows between them are so deep that sunlight only reaches the bottom for a few hours a day. People in those hollows live like their grandparents did, like their great-grandparents did. The modern world doesn't reach that far. In September 1977, 3 hunters went into the mountains above the town of War, West Virginia. Experienced men, locals who'd been hunting those woods since they could walk. They were after deer. Early bow season. They told their families they'd be gone 4 days. They never came back. Search parties went out. Volunteer firefighters, sheriff's deputies, citizens who knew the area. They searched for a week, found the hunters' base camp. Tents still standing, gear still there, food half eaten, but no hunters, no bodies, no blood, no sign of what had happened to them. Then they found the tree. About a quarter-mile from the camp, there was a massive oak that had been dead for years. Lightning struck. The search party found it broken, snapped in half, about 12 feet off the ground, not rotted through and fallen. Snapped, freshly broken, like something had just reached up and broken it in half. One of the searchers, a man named Harold Mullins, had grown up in those mountains. His grandmother had been half Cherokee. She'd told him stories, old stories about what lived in the deep woods, stories that went back generations before the white men came. Harold took one look at that broken tree and left, went home, packed up his family, and moved to Ohio. Didn't tell anyone why, just left. I learned this later. At the time, I didn't know Harold Mullins existed, but his grandmother's stories, those were about to become very relevant. The sheriff of McDowell County was a man named Roy Justice. He'd been in office for 12 years, knew everyone in the county, knew the mountains better than almost anyone, and he knew when something was wrong that he couldn't handle. Sheriff Justice made some calls, the kind of calls you make when you need help, but can't explain why over the phone. 2 days later, men in suits arrived from Washington. They didn't identify themselves, didn't show credentials, just asked questions and took notes. Then they disappeared, back to wherever they'd come from. A week after that, Captain Webb called an emergency muster. Full company. Everyone in uniform at the armory by 1800 hours. No explanation. Just be there. I drove down from Morgantown that evening with a bad feeling in my gut. Emergency musters meant something was happening. Something real. And in 1977, with the Cold War still hot, that could mean anything. Soviet aggression, domestic terrorism, natural disaster. We didn't know. The armory was buzzing when I arrived. in the U.S., all of them asking the same questions. What's going on? Why the emergency call? Are we being deployed? Nobody had answers. We milled around, smoking cigarettes and trading rumors, until Captain Webb called us to formation. He stood at the front of the drill hall with Lieutenant Davis and First Sergeant Patterson. His face was grim, more grim than I'd ever seen it, and I'd seen him get word that his best friend from West Point had been killed in Saigon. "Gentlemen," he began, "we've received orders from the Adjutant General's office. We are being activated for state duty, effective immediately. Duration unknown. Nature of the mission is classified." That got everyone's attention. State duty meant something was happening in West Virginia. Classified meant they didn't want us talking about it. The combination was unusual. "We will be deploying to McDowell County to assist in search and rescue operations in the Appalachian Mountains. 3 civilians are missing. Standard SAR protocols will apply. However, there are additional mission parameters that will be briefed on site by federal authorities." Federal authorities. That meant FBI, or worse. Something about this felt wrong. You didn't activate a full infantry company for search and rescue. You used local volunteers, emergency services, maybe some guard engineers or MPs if you needed manpower. But a full infantry company? With rifles? Captain Webb continued, "We will draw weapons and ammunition from the armory tonight. Full combat load. We will convoy to the staging area near the town of War and establish a forward operating base. From there, we will receive detailed briefings and begin operations." Full combat load. That was 210 rounds per man, 7 magazines, plus whatever the machine gun teams carried. Plus grenades, if they issued them. This wasn't search and rescue. This was combat preparation. Somebody in the back raised his hand. Corporal Williams, coal miner from Beckley. "Sir, why do we need combat loads for a search and rescue?" Webb's jaw tightened. "As I said, there are additional mission parameters that will be briefed on site. I don't have all the information yet. What I do know is that we've been given this mission and we're going to execute it professionally. Any other questions?" Silence. We all had questions, but we could see that Webb didn't have answers. Whatever was happening, the information was being held close. That happens sometimes. Operational security. Need to know. But it felt different this time. It felt like they were keeping us in the dark for a reason. We drew weapons. M16, A1 rifles, M60 machine guns, M79 grenade launchers, full combat load for everyone. We also drew cold weather gear, sleeping bags, entrenching tools, and a week's worth of sea rations. Whatever this mission was, it wasn't going to be quick. The convoy rolled out at 2200 hours. A column of trucks, winding south through the mountains in the dark. I rode in the back of a deuce and a half with my squad, watching the headlights of the truck behind us illuminate the fog that was settling into the hollows. The mountains rose around us like walls, like we were driving into something's throat. I'd grown up in these mountains, hunted them, fished them, knew them as well as anyone. But that night, they felt different, hostile, watching. I told myself it was just nerves, just the uncertainty of the mission. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger the further south we drove. We reached the staging area around 0200, a clearing outside the town of War that had been set up as a forward operating base. Tents were already erected, generators running, communications equipment, even a helicopter pad with 2 Hueys sitting on it. Someone had put serious resources into this operation. We dismounted and formed up. Captain Webb went to receive his briefing from whoever was in charge. The rest of us stood around in the cold mountain air, stamping our feet and blowing into our hands, waiting to find out what we'd gotten ourselves into. Around 300, Webb returned with 2 men I'd never seen before. They weren't military. They wore civilian clothes, hiking boots, field jackets, the kind of gear serious outdoorsmen use. But they had a look about them, the way they moved, the way they scanned the crowd. These were government men, probably not FBI. Something else. Webb called us back to formation. The 2 civilians stood beside him, faces unreadable. "Gentlemen, this is Agent Morris and Agent Tanner. They're with a federal agency that I'm not authorized to name. They will be briefing us on the specifics of our mission. I want you to listen carefully and ask questions afterward. Some of what they're going to tell you will be difficult to believe. I'm asking you to keep an open mind." Difficult to believe, that's what he said. I looked at the men around me. Vietnam veterans, combat experienced, hard men who'd seen things that would bury most civilians. What could possibly be difficult for us to believe? Agent Morris stepped forward. He was maybe 50. Gray hair, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. When he spoke, his voice was flat. Professional. Like a doctor delivering bad news. "Thank you, Captain. Gentlemen, I'll get straight to the point because we don't have time for preambles. 3 hunters are missing in these mountains. We don't expect to find them alive. We don't actually expect to find them at all. But finding them isn't your primary mission." He paused. Let that sink in. Finding them wasn't the mission. Then what was? Your primary mission is to locate, engage, and eliminate a group of unidentified creatures that have been responsible for multiple disappearances in this region over the past several years. These creatures are extremely dangerous. They are intelligent. They are aggressive. And they have killed before. Unidentified creatures. I felt the mood in the formation shift. Confusion, skepticism. A few men actually laughed, quickly stifled. This had to be a joke. Some kind of training exercise. Psychological evaluation, maybe. They couldn't be serious. But Morris's face didn't change. Neither did Tanner's. Neither did Webb's. They were serious. "I understand your skepticism," Morris continued. "I had the same reaction when I was first briefed 6 years ago. But I've since seen the evidence. I've seen the bodies. I've seen what these things can do. And I'm telling you right now, with complete certainty, that they are real, and they are in these mountains." He pulled out a photograph, held it up for us to see. It showed a footprint in mud, massive, at least 18 inches long, 5 toes, human-shaped but far too large. This print was found near the hunter's camp 3 days ago. We have dozens of similar casts from this region going back decades. Whatever made this print walks upright. It's bipedal, and based on the depth and stride length, we estimate it weighs between 600 and 800 pounds. 6 to 800 pounds. That was 3 to 4 times the size of an average man. That was grizzly bear territory. But grizzly bears don't have 5-toed, human-shaped feet. Local populations have stories about these creatures going back generations, Morris said. The Cherokee called them Tsul'kalu, the woods giants. They were said to live in the deepest parts of the mountains, where humans rarely went. When white settlers arrived, they brought their own stories. Wild men, woods devils, boogers. The names changed, but the descriptions remained consistent. Large, hairy, bipedal, dangerous. One of my men, Private First Class Harding, raised his hand. "Sir, are you telling us we're here to hunt Bigfoot?" Morris nodded. "That's the popular term. Yes, you're here to hunt Bigfoot. Multiple Bigfoots, actually. We believe there's a family group in this area, probably 6 to 8 individuals. They've become increasingly aggressive over the past 2 years. The 3 hunters aren't the first people to go missing. They're the 7th, 8th, and 9th. 9 people had disappeared in these mountains, and nobody had heard about it. That meant cover-up. That meant the government knew and was keeping it quiet. "Why us?" First Sergeant Patterson asked. His voice was calm but hard. "Why not active duty? Why not special operations?" Morris glanced at Tanner. Something passed between them. "Because special operations tried. 18 months ago, a team was sent into the Pacific Northwest to deal with a similar situation. It didn't go well. We lost men. The mission was a failure. After that, the decision was made to try a different approach. More men, less elite. Overwhelming numbers instead of small unit tactics. Less elite, that was one way to put it. We were weekend warriors being sent to do what Delta Force had failed at. The confidence I'd had in this mission, which wasn't much to begin with, dropped to zero. We believe," Morris continued, "that these creatures are most vulnerable when confronted by large numbers. They're ambush predators. They pick off individuals and small groups, but they avoid direct confrontation with superior forces. Your job is to be that superior force. Push into their territory, flush them out, and eliminate them. Push into their territory. Like we were hunting deer. Except the deer were 8 feet tall, weighed 700 pounds, and had apparently killed special operations soldiers." Captain Webb stepped forward. "I know this is a lot to process. Believe me, I had the same reaction when I was briefed. But we have our orders, and we're going to carry them out. We're soldiers. We follow orders. And right now, our orders are to go into those mountain towns and deal with whatever's killing people." He looked at each of us in turn, making eye contact, making sure we understood. "We will operate in squad-sized elements for security. No one goes anywhere alone. We maintain communication at all times. If you encounter these creatures, You engage with maximum firepower. Don't try to wound. Don't try to capture. Kill them. That's the mission. Questions? 100 questions. 1,000. But what was the point? We had our orders. We were going into those mountains whether we believed in Bigfoot or not, whether we thought this mission made sense or not. We were soldiers. This is what soldiers do. I looked at the men around me, saw the same expression on every face. Fear, sure. Confusion, definitely. But also resolve. We'd been through worse than this. We'd survived Vietnam. We'd survived firefights against an enemy that wanted to kill us. If there was something in these mountains, something dangerous, we'd handle it. That's what we did. But I also saw something else in those faces. Something I recognized from the war. That look men get when they know they're walking into something bad. When they can feel it in their bones. We were about to go hunting for something that had killed 9 people and apparently beaten a team of special operators. We were National Guard, weekend warriors, and we were being sent to finish what Delta Force couldn't. As we broke formation to prepare for the mission, I overheard Agent Morris talking quietly with Captain Webb. I don't think I was supposed to hear, but I did. Captain, I need to be honest with you. The team we sent before, they were some of the best soldiers in the world, and these things took them apart. I don't know if your men can succeed where they failed, but we're out of options. These creatures are getting bolder, moving closer to populated areas. If we don't stop them now, civilians are going to start dying in numbers we can't hide. Webb's response was quiet but firm. My men are combat veterans, Agent Morris. They've faced worse than this. Morris looked at him, and for just a moment his professional mask slipped. I saw fear in his eyes, real fear. No, Captain, he said. They haven't. We moved into the mountains at first light. 60 men in 6 squads, pushing into terrain that felt like it hadn't seen humans in decades. The forest was old growth. Massive oaks and poplars that had been standing since before the Revolutionary War. The undergrowth was thick. Rhododendron and mountain laurel so dense you couldn't see 10 feet in front of you. Perfect ambush country. I led 2nd Squad. 10 men, including myself. All Vietnam veterans, except for one kid, Private Collins, who'd joined the Guard right out of high school. He was 19, eager. Thought this whole thing was an adventure. I'd seen that attitude before, usually right before it got someone killed. We moved in a tactical column, point man out front, then the rest of us staggered on either side of the trail. Everyone watching their sector, everyone ready to react. It was like being back in the Central Highlands. Same feeling, same tension, same sense that something was watching from the tree line. The mountains of West Virginia aren't like mountains out west. They're not dramatic peaks with snow caps and clear vistas. They're old mountains, worn down by millions of years of erosion. Rounded tops, covered in forest, deep hollows between them where mist settles and stays. You can't see anything. can't get a sense of the terrain. You're just in it, surrounded by it, swallowed by it. By mid-morning, we'd covered maybe 3 miles. Doesn't sound like much, but in that terrain, with full packs and weapons, it was brutal. We stopped to rest and check in with command. Radio communications were already getting spotty. Too many hills. Too many dead zones. We could reach the FOB directly, but communication between squads was hit or miss. That's when First Squad found the camp. Sergeant Morrison's voice came over the radio, broken by static. "Command, this is First Squad. We've located the hunters' base camp. Requesting you send the feds up here. They're going to want to see this." We were closest to First Squad's position, so Webb ordered us to link up and provide security while Morris and Tanner made their way up. It took us about 20 minutes to reach them. What we found there is something I'll never forget. The camp was exactly as the search parties had described. 3 tents still standing, gear still organized, coolers with food that had long since spoiled. It looked like the hunters had just stepped away for a moment and never come back. But that wasn't what got our attention. The trees around the camp had been marked, claw marks, gouged into the bark at about 8 feet high, deep grooves that had torn through the outer bark and into the wood beneath. And they were everywhere. Every tree in a 50-foot radius had been marked. "Jesus Christ," Private Collins whispered. "What did that?" Nobody answered. We didn't have to. We all knew what had made those marks. The same thing that had left 18-inch footprints. The same thing that had killed 9 people. The same thing we were out here hunting. Morrison's point man had found something else. About 100 yards from the camp, in a small clearing, someone had built a structure. I don't know what else to call it. Branches had been woven together into a rough dome. It was maybe 8 feet high and 12 feet across. Inside were piles of leaves and grass, like bedding, like something had been sleeping there. "They were watching," Morrison said quietly. "They built this so they could watch the camp. The hunters had no idea they were being observed." Agent Morris arrived about an hour later with Tanner and Captain Webb. They examined the campsite, the claw marks, the structure. Morris took photographs of everything. His face got grimmer with each shot. "This is more sophisticated than we've seen before," he told Webb. "The observation structure. That shows planning. Patience. They watched those hunters for a while before they took them, studied their patterns, waited for the right moment." "You're saying they're intelligent," Webb said. "I'm saying they're more intelligent than we gave them credit for. This isn't animal behavior. This is strategic thinking. They're adapting, learning." That didn't make me feel better. An animal you can predict. An animal you can trap, bait, out. But something that learned, something that adapted, that was a whole different problem. We set up a perimeter around the camp and began a systematic search of the surrounding area. That's when Third Squad found the cave. It wasn't on any map, wasn't marked on any geological survey, just a dark opening in a hillside, hidden behind a curtain of vegetation. The entrance was about 10 feet high and maybe 15 feet wide, big enough for something large to move through comfortably. And there were tracks leading into it, lots of tracks, multiple sets of those massive five-toed prints, all converging on that dark opening. "We found their den," Sergeant Patterson said over the radio. "Orders." There was a long pause. Then Webb's voice. "Hold position. Do not enter. We'll bring up the whole company and plan our approach." It took another 2 hours to consolidate the company around the cave entrance. 60 men in a semicircle, weapons trained on that dark opening. The afternoon sun was already dropping toward the ridgeline. In another couple of hours, it would be dark. Nobody wanted to be out here in the dark. Morris and Tanner examined the cave entrance, the tracks going in and out, the wear patterns on the rock where large bodies had brushed past. There was a smell coming from inside, rank, musky, like a wet dog mixed with something else, something wild. "This is it," Morris said. "This is where they live. We need to go in and clear it." Captain Webb looked at the cave, then at his men, then back at the cave. "That's a fatal funnel, Agent Morris. Narrow entrance, unknown layout, limited visibility. My men go in there, they're going to take casualties. Your men were brought here to eliminate these creatures. This is where they are. If you want to complete your mission, you need to go in." Webb's jaw tightened. I could see him calculating. Risk versus reward. Mission success versus men's lives. The same calculation every commander has to make. The calculation that keeps some of them up at night for the rest of their lives. "We wait until morning," he decided. "We'll use the night to prepare, set up lights, plan our entry. I'm not sending my men into that cave blind." Morris started to object, but Tanner put a hand on his arm. "He's right. We rush this. We'll lose men for nothing. We take our time, do it right." We set up a defensive perimeter around the cave entrance, fighting positions dug in, fields of fire cleared, machine guns positioned to cover the opening. If anything came out of that cave tonight, it would walk into a wall of lead. The sun set around 1830. The temperature dropped fast. October in the mountains meant cold nights, and we were high enough in elevation that frost was forming on the ground. We huddled in our fighting positions, pulled our field jackets tight, and watched that cave entrance. The sounds started around 9 p.m. At first I thought it was wind, a low moan coming from somewhere in the hills. But there was no wind. The air was dead still. The trees weren't moving. Then I heard it more clearly. It wasn't wind. It was a vocalization. Something in the forest making a sound. Low, resonant. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, echoing off the hillsides, until you couldn't tell where the source was. Then another one answered. Different direction. Then another. Then another. They were communicating, surrounding us. The things we'd come to hunt were out there in the darkness, and they knew exactly where we were. "Contact," someone whispered on the radio. "I've got movement in the trees. 9 o'clock. Range about 50 meters. I've got something too. 11 o'clock. Big. It's big. There's one at our 6. Jesus Christ. They're behind us." Reports coming in from all around the perimeter. Movement everywhere. They were encircling us. "Hold fire," Webb commanded. "Nobody shoots until we have a clear target. I don't want us shooting each other." I stared into the darkness beyond my fighting position. We had some illumination from the half moon, but it barely penetrated the forest canopy. Everything was shadows. Movement could be anything. Wind in the brush, animals, my own imagination. Or it could be an 8-foot creature about to tear my head off. Then I saw it. Maybe 30 yards away, standing beside a tree. So still that at first I thought it was part of the tree. A massive silhouette, taller than any man, broader, watching us with absolute stillness. "Contact front," I whispered into my radio. "I have visual on one target. 30 meters. It's just standing there." "I see him," Private Harding whispered beside me. His rifle was shaking. "Sarge, what do we do?" "We wait," I said. "It's not advancing. We don't shoot until it's a threat." The creature didn't move. It just stood there, watching, evaluating. For maybe 5 minutes, we stared at each other through the darkness. Then it made a sound. Not a roar or a growl, almost like a grunt. A short, deliberate vocalization. And all around us, the other sounds stopped. Complete silence. Then the creature turned and walked away, just calmly turned and disappeared into the forest. The sounds didn't resume. They were gone. All of them. As quickly as they'd appeared. "What the hell was that?" Collins asked, his voice trembling. "That was them letting us know they're here," First Sergeant Patterson said. He'd moved up to our position during the encounter. His face was hard to read in the darkness, but his voice was steady. "They came to get a look at us, size us up. Now they know what they're dealing with." "Do we know what we're dealing with?" I asked. Patterson didn't answer. He didn't have to. We didn't sleep that night. Nobody did. And we stayed in our fighting positions, weapons ready, waiting for an attack that never came. But we heard them. All night long. The vocalizations, the wood knocks, sharp cracking sounds like someone hitting a tree with a baseball bat. They were out there, moving around us, communicating, planning. By morning, everyone was exhausted, red-eyed and jumpy. Some of the men had 1,000-yard stares, that same look they'd had in Vietnam when the stress started to break them down. "We need to finish this," Webb told Morris. "Today. My men can't take another night out here." Morris nodded. "Then we go into the cave. That's the only way to end it." The plan was simple. First and second squads would enter the cave as the assault element. Third and fourth would provide security at the entrance. Fifth and sixth would remain in the perimeter positions in case the creatures tried to flank us. We were issued flashlights and flares. Some of the men improvised torches. We'd be fighting in close quarters, in total darkness. Not ideal. Not even close to ideal. But there was no other way. At 0800, we formed up at the cave entrance, 20 men ready to go in. I looked at my squad: Harding, Collins, Martinez, Williams, Jensen, Kowalski. Good men. Scared men. Men who trusted me to lead them through whatever was waiting in that darkness. "Stay tight," I told them. "Watch your sectors. Call out anything you see, and don't hesitate to shoot. Whatever's in there, it's not human. You don't give it a chance. You put it down. They nodded, locked and loaded, ready as they'd ever be. Captain Webb gave the signal. First squad moved in first. We followed 10 meters behind. The cave swallowed us. The darkness was immediate and absolute. Our flashlights cut through it, but only showed us a few feet ahead. The cave walls were wet. Water dripping somewhere. The smell was overpowering. That same rank musk we'd smelled outside, but concentrated, intensified. It made my eyes water. The cave went back further than we'd expected. It wasn't just a hollow in the hillside. It was a tunnel that went deep into the mountain. The floor was worn smooth, used, heavily trafficked. We moved in tactical formation, slow and careful, every step deliberate, every corner cleared before we advanced. Standard infantry tactics, but nothing about this was standard. About 100 meters in, the cave opened up into a larger chamber. Our flashlight beams couldn't reach the walls, couldn't reach the ceiling. It was huge, and it was occupied. The first thing I saw was the bones, piles of them against the walls, in the corners. Animal bones mostly, deer, bear, some I couldn't identify. But there were other bones too, bones that made my stomach turn. Human bones, skulls, rib cages, femurs cracked open. They'd been here for years, decades, maybe centuries. This wasn't a new thing. These creatures had been killing people in these mountains for a long, long time. Found the hunters, someone from First Squad said quietly. He was shining his light on 3 trees near the far wall, or what was left of them. They hadn't been dead long, maybe a week. The smell was unbelievable. What did this to them? Collins whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. We all knew what had done it. The same things that were probably watching us right now from somewhere in this chamber. That's when we heard it. A sound from deeper in the cave. Something moving. Something big. Contact, Sergeant Morrison called out. I've got... He didn't finish. Something hit him from the side. I saw in my flashlight beam for just a second. Massive. Dark. Moving impossibly fast for its size. It grabbed Morrison and threw him. Actually threw him like he weighed nothing. He hit the cave wall and didn't get up. Then all hell broke loose. They came from everywhere. From passages we hadn't seen, from shadows we thought were empty. 3 of them. 4. Maybe more. Moving through the darkness, hitting us, and disappearing before we could get a clear shot. Men were screaming, rifles firing, muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness like a nightclub from hell. I saw one of the creatures clearly for maybe 2 seconds, 8 feet tall, covered in dark reddish hair. Face that was almost human, but wrong. Flat nose, heavy brow, eyes that reflected our lights like a cat's. I fired, center mass, saw the rounds hit, saw the creature stumble. But it didn't go down. It turned toward me. Made a sound that was somewhere between a roar and a scream. and it charged. I emptied my magazine into it. 20 rounds. It kept coming. Grabbed my rifle and ripped it out of my hands. Then it hit at me with an open palm, and I was flying. I hit something hard. The world went gray, then black. I don't know how long I was unconscious. Seconds, maybe. When I came to, the chamber was chaos. Muzzle flashes everywhere. Men shouting. Creatures roaring. The sounds of violence in total darkness. Someone grabbed my arm. Harding. He was bleeding from a gash on his head, but he was mobile. "We have to get out," he screamed. "They're killing us." He was right. I could see it now. See the men down. See the creatures moving among us. This wasn't a fight. It was a slaughter. "Fall back," I shouted. "Everyone, fall back to the entrance." We ran. The men who could still run, stumbling over bodies and rocks and bones, crashing through the darkness toward the dim light of the entrance. The creatures pursued us. I could hear them right behind us. Feel the air move as they swung at us. But they didn't follow us all the way out. At some point, they stopped, let us go, like they were making a point. We burst out of the cave into daylight, fell on the ground, gasping, bleeding, missing men. I did a count. We'd gone in with 20 men. 12 came out. 8 men were still in that cave, dead or dying. And there was no way in hell we were going back in to get them. Captain Webb came running up. His face went white when he saw us. "Report! What happened?" I looked at him, at Morris and Tanner behind him, at the men around me, broken and bleeding. "They were waiting for us," I said. "They knew we were coming, and they let us walk right into it." We spent the next hour treating the wounded and trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. Of the 12 men who'd made it out of the cave, 7 were injured. Some badly. Martinez had a broken arm. Jensen had deep lacerations across his back that would need surgery. Kowalski was in shock, couldn't speak, just stared at nothing, with that 1,000-yard look I knew too well from Vietnam. The men still in the cave weren't coming back. We all knew that. 8 men dead in under 3 minutes. Among them was Sergeant Morrison, first squad's leader. Collins, the 19-year-old kid who'd thought this was going to be an adventure. Specialist Warren, who had a wife and 2 daughters waiting for him in Charleston. Gone. All of them. Killed by something that shouldn't exist. Morris and Tanner stood off to the side, talking quietly into a satellite phone they'd produced from somewhere, making calls to people above them, reporting the disaster. Getting new orders. I wanted to walk over there and beat them both to death. They'd sent us into that cave. They'd known what was in there. And they'd watched us go in anyway. Captain Webb was in rough shape. Not physically, emotionally. He'd just lost 8 men. In his mind, he'd gotten them killed. That's how commanders think. Every death is their failure, their responsibility. I could see it eating him alive. "We need to pull back," Lieutenant Davis said. He was the senior officer now, with Webb barely functional. "Get these wounded to proper medical care. Regroup. Figure out another approach. If we pull back, They'll scatter, Morris said, rejoining the group. They know they hurt us. If we give them time, they'll abandon this den and relocate. We'll never find them again, and they'll keep killing. My men can't take another assault like that, Davis shot back. We're down to 42 effectives. Half of them are shaken so bad they can barely hold their rifles. We're done here. You're done when we say you're done, Lieutenant. I thought Davis was going to hit him. His hand actually moved toward his sidearm, but First Sergeant Patterson stepped between them. We still have a mission, Patterson said. His voice was flat, emotionless. The voice of a man who'd seen too much death to feel it anymore. 8 of our brothers are in that cave. We don't leave them. We figure out a way to get them out, and we finish what we started. That cut through the anger. Patterson was right. We didn't leave men behind. Not in Vietnam. Not anywhere. Those 8 bodies in that cave, they were our responsibility. We had to bring them home. But how? We couldn't go back through that entrance. They'd massacre us again. We needed another way. There might be another option, Tanner said. He'd been quiet through all of this, but now he pulled out a map. Topographical. Old. This area was heavily mined in the early 1900s. Coal mines all through these mountains. Most of them were abandoned decades ago. Sealed up or just left. Some of them connect to natural cave systems. He pointed to a spot on the map. There's an old mine entrance about half a mile east of here. The Coalwood No. 7. It was abandoned in 1932 after a collapse killed 14 miners. According to the geological surveys, the lower levels of that mine connect to an extensive cave network. You think it connects to this cave? Davis asked. It's possible. These creatures use cave systems for shelter and movement. They might have found a way to connect the mine to their den. If we go in through the mine, we might be able to approach them from a direction they're not expecting. It was a long shot, a hell of a long shot, going into an abandoned mine that had already killed 14 people, hoping it connected to a cave system occupied by creatures that had just massacred 8 of our men. This was not a good plan, but it was the only plan we had. We left 3rd and 4th squads to maintain the perimeter at the cave entrance. If the creatures tried to escape that way, they'd be met with machine gun fire. The rest of us, 30 men total, moved east toward the old mine. The entrance to Coalwood No. 7 was partially collapsed. Timbers rotted away, rusted rail tracks disappearing into darkness. A sign that had once warned of danger was now unreadable, covered in decades of moss and decay. The mountain had been trying to reclaim this place. What had happened here? What was still happening here? Morris went in first with a flashlight. Came back after a few minutes. It's passable. Main shaft goes back several hundred meters. After that, it branches. We'll have to split up to search the tunnels. Split up? Davis said. After what just happened? We don't have time to search methodically. If there is a connection to their den, we need to find it fast, before they realize what we're doing. I hated everything about this plan. Splitting up in a confined space against an enemy that had just proven how deadly they were in close quarters. But we were running out of options. And we were running out of daylight. We entered the mine in squad formation. 1st and 2nd squads, or what was left of them. The main shaft was maybe 8 feet high and 6 feet wide, timber supports every 10 feet. Some of them looked solid. Others were rotted through, barely holding up the tons of rock above us. Water dripped from the ceiling. The floor was ankle deep in places. Coal dust covered everything, turning our skin and uniforms black. The smell was different from the cave. Musty, old, like a tomb that had been sealed for decades. Which, I suppose, it was. Those 14 miners were still in here somewhere, buried in the collapse that had shut this place down. We moved deeper. The main shaft gave way to branching tunnels, just as Morris had said. We split up. My squad took the left branch. First squad, now led by Corporal Williams since Morrison was dead, took the right. "Stay in radio contact," Davis ordered. "Report anything you find. Anything." We acknowledged and pushed into our tunnel. The ceiling got lower. We had to crouch to move, then duck walk. The walls pressed in. I could feel the weight of the mountain above us. Millions of tons of rock held up by rotting timber and luck. This is where I need to tell you something about coal mines. I'd worked in them for years. I knew what a stable mine felt like, smelled like, sounded like. This wasn't stable. The timbers were groaning. Small rocks kept falling from the ceiling. Water was running in ways it shouldn't be. This mine was active, geologically active, shifting. And we were in it. We'd gone maybe 200 meters when Harding stopped. "You hear that?" I listened. At first, nothing. Then I heard it. A sound from somewhere ahead, low and rhythmic. Almost like breathing, but deeper, bigger. "Something's in here with us," Martinez whispered. His broken arm was splinted, but he'd insisted on coming. Said he needed to see this through. We crept forward, weapons ready, flashlights probing the darkness. The sound got louder, clearer. It was definitely breathing. Something large, somewhere just ahead. The tunnel opened into a small chamber. Natural, not man-made. The mine had broken through into a cave. And in that cave, curled up in a corner, was a creature. It was smaller than the ones in the main cave, maybe 6 feet tall. Young, a juvenile. It was sleeping, or had been sleeping. As our lights hit it, its eyes opened, reflected back at us, yellow-green, alert, terrified. "Hold fire," I whispered. "It's a kid. It's just a kid." The creature made a sound, high-pitched, scared, a distress call. And from somewhere in the tunnels behind it, something answered. Something big. Coming fast. "Move!" I shouted. "Back the way we came. Now!" We ran, stumbled, crashed through the tunnel as fast as we could. Behind us, I could hear it coming, squeezing through passages that should have been too small for it, screaming in rage. We'd threatened its young, and it was coming to kill us for it. We burst out of the side tunnel into the main shaft and ran directly into First Squad coming from the other direction. "They're behind us, too," Williams shouted. "Multiple contacts. They're hurting us." Hurting us. The word hit me like a punch. That's exactly what they were doing. They'd let us into the mine, let us split up. And now they were driving us, pushing us somewhere, to a kill zone, just like they'd done in the main cave. The entrance! Davis was on the radio. Everyone to the entrance, full speed. We ran. All of us. 30 men in full rout, crashing through an unstable coal mine, with creatures right behind us. The timbers were shaking now, rocks falling, dust everywhere. The mine was coming apart around us. I saw the light of the entrance ahead. Daylight. Safety. We were going to make it. That's when the ceiling came down. I don't know if it was the vibration of us running, or the creatures, or if the mine just picked that moment to finally give up. But the timbers ahead of us snapped like twigs. Tons of rock came crashing down, a wall of debris that cut us off from the exit. We were trapped. Behind us, the sounds were getting closer. The creatures, coming for us. I looked around, counted heads. We'd lost some in the collapse, buried, dead, or dying under the rubble. Maybe 20 of us left, trapped in a dead-end shaft with things that wanted to kill us, closing in from behind. Options? Davis demanded. Give me options. We dig, someone said. We dig through the collapse. That'll take hours. We don't have hours. Then we fight. That was Patterson, standing calm in the chaos, rifle ready. We find a defensive position, and we make them pay for every inch. It was suicide. We all knew it. But what choice did we have? We found a spot where the tunnel narrowed, set up a hasty defensive position. Those of us who still had ammunition loaded our weapons. Those who didn't picked up rocks, anything to fight with. The sounds got louder, closer, multiple sources. They were massing for a final assault. Steady, Patterson said. Just like K-san, make your shots count. Aim for the head, and don't stop shooting until your weapon's empty. K-san. He'd been there. 1968. 77 days under siege. If he'd survived that, he could survive this, or at least die well. The first one came around the corner, massive, filling the tunnel. We opened fire. The muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like lightning. The creature staggered, fell, but another was right behind it, and another. They kept coming. We kept shooting. Men fell around me, grabbed by those massive hands and broken. I saw Harding go down, saw Jensen pulled into the darkness, heard the screams, the sounds of bones breaking, men dying. I emptied magazine after magazine, changed whenever I had a chance, didn't aim, just pointed and fired at the shapes in the darkness. Kill zone. No choice but to fight. Then there was silence. The creatures had pulled back. The attack was over. I looked around. Bodies everywhere. Theirs and ours. In the dim light of our remaining flashlights, I counted. 9 of us left. 9 out of 30 who'd entered the mine. 9 out of 60 who'd come to these mountains. Why did they stop? Someone asked. I didn't know. We were trapped. They had us. Why stop? Then I heard it. From behind the collapsed entrance. Voices. Machinery. They were digging us out. The men we'd left at the cave entrance must have heard the shooting, come to investigate, found the collapse, and now they were trying to reach us. The creatures heard it too. I could see them in the darkness, still there, still watching, but not advancing, waiting to see what happened. For 3 hours we sat in that shaft, wounded and dying, listening to our brothers dig through the rubble, watching the creatures watch us, neither side moving. A standoff that I still don't fully understand. Then the first hole broke through. Light from the outside. A voice calling in. "We're coming, hold on!" The creatures moved, all at once, retreating back into the depths of the mine, into their tunnels and caves and whatever darkness they called home. They were gone, just like that. We crawled out of that mine like survivors of a shipwreck, blinking in the sunlight, black with coal dust, covered in blood, 9 of us from the 30 who'd gone in. Combined with the losses in the first cave assault, we'd gone from 60 men to less than 20 in one day. The mission was over. We all knew it. We'd lost too many. Couldn't take any more casualties. Whatever was in those mountains, they'd beaten us, just like they'd beaten Delta Force in Canada. But as the medevac helicopters arrived to take the wounded to hospitals, as we loaded what bodies we could recover onto trucks, I saw something that I'll never forget. Standing on the ridgeline above us, maybe a quarter-mile away, silhouettes against the late afternoon sky. The creatures watching us leave. They stood there in a line, 5 of them, maybe 6, just watching. Then the largest one raised its arm. Not a threat, not a gesture of anger. It looked almost like a wave, a farewell. We'd come to their home to kill them. They'd defended themselves, killed a lot of us. And now, they were watching us go. I couldn't help it. I raised my arm and waved back. They turned and disappeared over the ridge. Gone. Back to their mountains, their caves, their world that we'd tried to take from them. "What was that?" Davis asked. He'd seen the whole thing. "I don't know," I said. "Respect, maybe. One warrior to another?" "They're not warriors. They're animals." I looked at the ridgeline where they'd been standing. "Animals don't wave goodbye, Lieutenant." He didn't have an answer for that. We left those mountains on October 17th, 1977. 19 men out of 60. The rest were dead, missing, or too wounded to walk. It was the worst single-day casualty rate for the West Virginia National Guard since the Second World War. And nobody would ever know about it. The cover story came together fast. Training accident. Unexploded ordnance from old Army exercises. A terrible tragedy that claimed the lives of 33 guardsmen and wounded a dozen more. The story made the local papers, but didn't go national. Just another training accident in a country that had a lot of them. The families were told the same lie, presented with folded flags and condolences. Their sons and husbands and fathers had died serving their country in a routine training exercise. The truth that they'd been killed by creatures that officially didn't exist was classified at a level that most of us didn't know existed. We were debriefed for 3 days. Agents we'd never seen before. Different from Morris and Tanner, but with the same cold professionalism. They went over every detail of the operation, made us draw maps, describe the creatures, estimate their numbers and capabilities. Then they made us sign documents, non-disclosure agreements with penalties that included federal prison. You saw nothing, we were told. You experienced nothing. If anyone asks, it was a training accident. If you tell anyone the truth, you will be prosecuted. And no one will believe you anyway. That last part was true. Who would believe it? Bigfoot killed 33 National Guardsmen in West Virginia? We didn't even believe it ourselves, and we'd been there. Captain Webb took medical retirement within a month. Official reason was injuries sustained in the training accident. Real reason was that he was broken. The loss of his men had shattered something inside him. He moved to Florida. Drank himself to death by 1984. Never married. Never had kids. Just faded away with the guilt of what had happened. Lieutenant Davis stayed in the Guard, made captain eventually, but he was never the same, quiet, distant. He led the men who'd survived, but never talked about what happened, never acknowledged it. It was like those 3 days in the mountains had never occurred. He died in 2003. Heart attack. His family found a journal in his things, pages and pages about the operation, about what we'd seen, about the men we'd lost. He'd been writing about it for 25 years but never told anyone. First Sergeant Patterson finished his 30 years and retired, moved to Texas. Last I heard, he was still alive, living in a VA facility with Alzheimer's. Maybe that's a blessing. He doesn't remember what happened. Doesn't have to carry it anymore. The rest of us scattered. Some stayed in West Virginia. Others moved away, far away. We didn't stay in touch. It was easier not to, easier to pretend it was just a bad dream. Easier to go on with our lives and try to forget that we'd lost brothers to something we couldn't explain. I stayed in Morgantown, went back to the mines, worked another 20 years, underground, before my lungs gave out. Black lung, they called it. Occupational hazard. But I think the real damage was done in that mine in McDowell County. Breathing that air, that dust, whatever else was in there. I got married in 1980. Good woman named Sarah. We had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. I never told Sarah what really happened in 1977. Told her the same lie everyone else got. Training accident. She believed me. Why wouldn't she? But she knew something was wrong. She could see it. The nightmares, the way I'd freeze sometimes, staring at nothing. The way I couldn't go into the basement without checking every corner. PTSD, they call it now. Back then, they just called you crazy. Or weak. Or a drunk, which I was for a while. The kids grew up, moved away. Sarah passed in 2015. Cancer, I've been alone since then, just me and my memories, and this story I have never been able to tell. Until now. A few years after the operation, I started doing research. Quietly, carefully, trying to understand what we'd encountered, what had killed my friends. The more I learned, the more I realized that we'd stumbled into something much bigger than a National Guard training mission. The creatures we'd fought, they weren't unique to West Virginia. There were reports of them all over the country, all over the world, actually. Every continent, except Antarctica, had sightings. Every culture had stories. The Yeti in the Himalayas, the Yeren in China, the Yowie in Australia. Different names, same description: large, bipedal, hairy, elusive, and deadly. I found reports of disappearances going back centuries. Hunters and hikers and travelers who'd vanished in wilderness areas and were never found. Many of them were probably just accidents, people getting lost or hurt with no one to help them. But some of them, I think, were taken by the same things that took those hunters in McDowell County, by the same things that killed my men. The government knew. They'd known for a long time. Morris and Tanner, the agents who'd briefed us, they were part of a program. I never found out its official name. Maybe it didn't have one. But their job was to manage encounters, track sightings, cover up incidents, and occasionally eliminate populations that became too aggressive. That's what we'd been sent to do. Eliminate a population. But the population had fought back, had won, and the government had learned a hard lesson about underestimating what they were dealing with. Then came British Columbia. I didn't know about it at the time. The operation was classified even deeper than ours. But years later, in the early 2000s, I connected with one of the survivors. Through back channels. People who knew people who knew people. His name was Carter. He'd been a Delta Force operator on the 1978 mission. The one that was supposed to succeed where we'd failed. They didn't succeed. They lost 5 men. The whole thing was a disaster, just like ours. Carter told me something that confirmed what I'd suspected. The government had been trying to eliminate these creatures for years, sending in military units, losing men, covering it up, and failing every time. They couldn't beat them, couldn't contain them, couldn't even effectively study them. They're smarter than us, Carter said. Not in every way. They don't have technology, don't have civilization as we understand it. But in the woods, in their territory, they're superior. They've been there for thousands of years. They know every tree, every rock, every shadow. And they know how to fight. He was right. We'd gone into those mountains with M16 rifles and machine guns and 60 combat veterans. We'd come out with 19 men and our tails between our legs. They'd beaten us, outthought us, outhunted us. In our arrogance, we'd thought we were the predators. We were wrong. After British Columbia, the government changed their approach. No more direct assaults. No more trying to kill them. Instead, they focused on containment, keeping them in remote areas, covering up sightings, managing the population through other means. I don't know the details, don't want to know, but the attacks stopped, at least the ones that made it to any kind of record. I've thought about those creatures a lot over the years, tried to understand them. They killed my friends, killed 33 good men who were just following orders. I should hate them, part of me does. But another part of me understands. We invaded their territory, came to kill them and their families. They defended themselves. Isn't that what any creature would do? What any human would do? If someone came to your home with weapons, intending to kill you and your children, wouldn't you fight back? We were the aggressors. They were the defenders. We were wrong. They were right. That's hard to admit, hard to accept, especially when I think about Morrison and Collins and Warren and all the others who didn't come home. But it's the truth. The creatures in those Appalachian Mountains, they just wanted to be left alone. They'd been living there for centuries, maybe longer, hunting, raising their young, living their lives in the deep forest where humans rarely went. They weren't bothering anyone until we started bothering them. The hunters who'd gone missing, I learned later, that they'd been in an area that locals knew to avoid. Old stories passed down through generations. Don't go past the third ridge. Don't hunt in the hollow below the dead oak. Don't go where the wild men live. Most people listened to those stories. The hunters didn't, and they paid for it. Were their deaths justified? No. I'm not saying that. They didn't deserve to die for wandering into the wrong part of the forest. But they weren't innocent victims of random violence. They were casualties of a conflict that had been going on for a long time. A conflict between humans who wanted to use every part of the land and creatures who needed some of it to remain wild. We lost that conflict in West Virginia in 1977, in British Columbia in 1978, and other places I probably don't know about. We kept trying to eliminate them, and they kept beating us. Eventually, the government gave up, started coexisting instead of fighting. It was the only option that worked. I think about that sometimes. What it means. We're used to being the apex predator, the dominant species, the ones who control everything. But in those mountains, in those forests, we're not. There's something else out there. Something older. Something stronger in its own environment. And we can't beat it. Can't control it. Can only learn to live with it. That's humbling. For a species as arrogant as humans, that's really humbling. I'm 71 years old. I have lung cancer. The doctors say I'll be lucky to see spring. Maybe that's why I'm finally telling this story. Because I won't be around to face the consequences. Because the men who made me sign those NDAs are probably dead themselves. Because after 47 years, the truth deserves to come out. 33 guardsmen died in those mountains. 33 men with families and futures and dreams. They didn't die in a training accident. They died fighting something that the government knew about and sent them to kill anyway. They died because of arrogance. Because someone in Washington decided that weekend warriors could do what special operators couldn't. Because the creatures in those mountains were underestimated. Again, Morrison, Collins, Warren, Jensen, Williams, Martinez, all the others. I remember their names, every single one. I've carried them for 47 years. They deserve to be remembered. Their families deserve to know the truth, even if that truth is impossible to believe. The creatures are still out there, in West Virginia, in the Appalachian Mountains from Georgia to Maine, in the forest of the Pacific Northwest, in wilderness areas all over the world. They've always been there, and they'll probably always be there, long after we're gone. I used to want revenge, used to dream about going back to those mountains with better weapons, better tactics, and finishing what we'd started, killing every last one of them for what they did to my friends. But I don't feel that way anymore. What would be the point? They were defending their home, their families. They did what any creature does when threatened. We were the invaders, the aggressors, the ones who started it. Now I just want people to know, to understand that there are things in this world that we don't control, can't control. Things that have as much right to exist as we do, maybe more, since they were here first. The Appalachian Mountains are ancient, oldest mountains in North America. They've been there for 480 million years. Humans have been in North America for maybe 15,000 years. Whatever those creatures are, they've been in those mountains a lot longer than us. It's their home. We're the newcomers, the intruders. Maybe that's the real lesson of what happened in 1977. Not that we need better weapons or better tactics, but that we need to accept that some places aren't ours. Some territories belong to something else. And when we trespass, when we threaten what lives there, we face consequences. 33 men faced those consequences in McDowell County. They died for a mission that should never have been ordered, for a war that should never have been fought, for a conflict that could only end one way. I survived. 19 of us survived. We came home and kept the Ugrant lived our lives. But we never forgot, never stopped carrying those mountains with us. The smell of that cave, the sounds of those creatures, the faces of our friends in the moment before they died. I'm ready to put it down now, ready to tell the truth and let it go. I've carried it long enough. 47 years is enough. To the families of the men who died, I'm sorry. Sorry we couldn't save them. Sorry we couldn't bring them all home. Sorry we lied to you about how they died. They deserved better. You deserved better. To the men who were there with me, who survived and kept the secret all these years. I hope this doesn't cause you trouble. I hope you understand why I had to tell it. Why the truth matters, even after all this time. To the creatures in the mountains, I don't know if you can hear this. Don't know if you even exist the way I think you do. But if you can, I want you to know something. I understand. I understand why you fought, why you killed. I don't hate you for it. Not anymore. And to whoever reads this, whoever listens to this story, I just want you to think. Think about what it means. About what's really out there in the wild places. About what we've lost by trying to control everything. About what we might gain by learning to share. The mountains remember. They remember everything that's happened in them, the creatures, the miners, the guardsmen. All of it. They'll remember long after we're gone. Maybe that's enough. Maybe being remembered is all any of us can hope for. My name is Earl Combs. I'm 71 years old. And this is what really happened in the mountains of West Virginia in October 1977. Thank you for listening. I need to add one more thing. Something I didn't learn until years later. Remember the man I mentioned at the beginning? Harold Mullins? The one who'd looked at the broken tree and moved his family to Ohio without explanation? I tracked him down in 1995. Found him living in Columbus. Old man by then. Dying of emphysema, but willing to talk. His grandmother had been half Cherokee. She'd told him stories about the Tsul'kalu, the giants of the mountains. But she'd also told him something else. Something that explained why he'd left so fast when he saw that tree. They marked their territory, Harold told me. The old people knew the signs. Trees broken at height, claw marks, structures in the forest. When you see those signs, you're in their land. And if you stay, you become theirs. What does that mean? I asked. Become theirs? He looked at me with old eyes that had seen too much. It means they'll take you, keep you. The old stories said they sometimes kept people alive, for a while, studying them, learning from them. Then he trailed off. My grandmother said they were curious. About us, about what we were. But curious things can be dangerous. When they're done being curious, they're done with you. I thought about the hunters, about the bodies we'd found in the cave, about the men we'd lost who we never recovered. Were they studied? Kept alive in the darkness while those things examined them? I don't know. I'll never know. But the thought has haunted me ever since. Harold died a few months after our conversation. I was the last person he told those stories to. His grandmother's knowledge, passed down through generations, ended with him. How much else has been lost? How much did the old peoples know that we've forgotten? The Appalachian Mountains hold a lot of secrets. The creatures are just one of them, and some secrets, maybe, are meant to stay buried. But not this one, not anymore, This is the truth about what happened in West Virginia in 1977. Believe it or don't. That's up to you. I know what I saw, what I survived, what killed my friends. And I know that it's still out there, waiting, watching, in the mountains that have been its home since before we existed. Some things are older than us, stronger than us, and they don't belong to us. The mountains remember, and so do I.